All right. Can everyone hear me? All right. So, I love math. Now, I can already hear some gasps in the audience because I think this is one of my most polarizing opinions, especially as a high schooler. Now, since I've liked math for basically all of my life, I've been long confused as to why this is such a polarizing opinion and such a shocking thing to hear for so many people. So today I'm going to talk about mathematical thinking and what this means for economic disparities and try to tackle how we can make everyone love math more. So first, I wanted to figure out why people dislike math. So for the sake of scientific concreteness and statistical validity, I did this in the most scientific way possible. I texted an arbitrary number of my friends, and I have their responses up here for us to look at. Now, the most common opinion here seems to be I'm bad at it, so I dislike math, right? Someone said, I like math because I'm good at it. Some people cited that they don't learn math quickly. The part with the numbers is annoying. I don't know what I can do about that one. But overall, it seems like there's just a lot of challenges with math overall, and people resent math for it, right? My second question was, what does math research look like, or what does super challenging math look like? Now, for this, a lot of people just cited, solving challenging problems, and there was like a mix of opinions on what that actually meant, right? Some people said it's pretty useless. Sitting at your desk until 3 a.m. and contributing nothing to the world, that sounds about right to me as a mathematician. Someone just sent me a picture of a guy at a whiteboard. I think overall, the takeaway here that I was getting is people think some math is just solving math for the sake of it, and it doesn't have much relevance. On the other hand, I got a lot of responses that indicated math research, meaningful math, means applying stuff to real-world situations, using what we know to solve new real-world problems. This is a distinction between two areas of pure and applied math that need to be handled in education in a very specific way. So I think my answers to these two questions can be summed up in one story. Around third grade, I was just getting into math, and my brother was a college student at the time. And I thought, I guess he would have a little bit of fun. So he came to me and said, hey, I have a super hard math problem for you, and if you solve it, I'll buy you donuts. And I was like, oh my God, amazing. I got to get this, right? So I listened to his problem. Here's what he told me. He said, we're going to start with a positive integer, and if it's odd, we're going to multiply by 3 and add 1. If it's even, we're just going to divide by 2. We're going to keep doing that until we get to the number 1. So if you start with 7, it's odd, so you multiply by 3 and add 1 to get 22. Divide by 2 to get 11. Then you get 34, so on, until you get to 5, 16, 8, 4, 2, and 1. So this one ends in 1, right? And when we get to 1, we stop. The simple question here is, does every number end with 1, right? When we do this sequence on every number, no matter how long it takes, does it eventually end up at this number, right? At this number 1. Now, simple question, right? Easy to understand. Most third graders could probably grapple with it because it's just basic arithmetic, right? But when I came to him a couple days later, I had nothing. I had no idea how to solve it, right? And I was stubborn, so it took me a few days to admit that. But what he told me was, I don't know either. This is actually one of the hardest math problems in the field today. Yet, it's easy to understand for anyone. At first I was mad because I didn't get my donuts. But then I was shocked, right? Because something so simple wasn't solvable with the thousands of years of math that we've developed. You can investigate this problem further. This might look like your investment portfolio for February 2025, but it's actually the Collatz conjecture. So if we start with the number 25, right, we see we call them hailstone numbers, right? Because you can see they all fall down, right? No matter where you start, it ends up just going up and down until you eventually get to the number 1. We've tried this for the first 2 to the 68 numbers, right? And they reach 1 for all of them. There's a lot of visually captivating concepts here. We can actually visualize this problem in a tree like this, right? Each little bubble here represents a starting positive integer, and we can follow the path until we get to 1 in the middle. What we just did is 7, and you can see how we can trace it all the way to 1. This problem is so infamous for being easy to understand but impossible to tackle. Until maybe 1 or 2 years ago, it was actually in the realm of something we didn't even know how to start on. Completely perplexing, right? So what does it take to solve a problem like this, right? We have a lot of challenging math problems that, were maybe solvable after a few months, but this is more akin to something that would take maybe a new field of math to be invented for us to be able to solve, right? Now, I think there's a lot to take away from this in terms of my thoughts, right? First, this problem is interesting. Why? Not because it has an interesting solution, but because it has no solution yet, right? Math can be interesting because it's hard, right? The fact that it's challenging is the captivating storytelling point. The other thing is that a challenging math problem can still invoke creative thought. And I think these are 2 things we should carry forward in teaching math today. So usually in a classroom setting, you're presented with, here's how you do a math problem, here's how you do this specific process, and then you're given problems on how to do that process. You're never presented with problems that you don't know how to solve. You're never presented with problems that don't have a solution, right? And I think this is valuable to incorporate because this is the mathematical thinking that I was talking about. Now, I think this is an interesting quote from a mathematician, G.H. Hardy. He had just come out of World War I. He'd seen math be used for a lot of bad things. And what he said was, we've concluded that, on the whole, trivial math is useful and real math is not, right? What does this mean? He's talking about this distinction between pure and applied math, right? He's saying that, the easy stuff, the applied stuff isn't very useful, but the pure stuff, the things that don't really have a known application to our world yet, that's what we need to focus on, right? I think that it kind of answers that point we brought up before about applications of math research, but it kind of doesn't, right? Because we saw some people value application in math, and some people just assumed it didn't have any. I think in the context of math education, it's important to emphasize one thing, right? Math obviously has a lot of interesting applications. Although this Collatz conjecture problem might seem useless, it's actually really valuable to know how to do this. No, I'm just kidding. It's completely useless to know how to do this. But in the process of finding the solution, we invent things that can be useful, right? The secondary point, though, is you didn't need to know the application of this problem to find it interesting. Applications aren't necessarily what make math interesting, but they do what make math worth exploring, right? So storytelling in math is more important than focusing on applications when we're talking about education. So that's something we should carry forward, right? Motivate math with interesting questions. Motivate math with creative thinking, right? Instead of just focusing on processes, focusing on known questions, and focusing on existing solutions. What does this mean for economic inequality, right? In higher income schools, in better funded schools, we see great selection of math courses, right? And it's no secret that income is extremely correlated with performance on standardized math tests, and even STEM careers, right? So one thing that's interesting is these guys did a study studying around 7,000 kids, and what they found was even controlling for things like socioeconomic status and test performance, the strongest indicator of whether students would go into a STEM career is actually their math interest. This is irrespective of how good they are at math and irrespective of their socioeconomic status. Math interest is the strongest predictor of STEM careers. MA you see there is actually math anxiety, right? How do they perceive themselves to be at math? That's actually a weaker predictor. How they think they are at math is a weaker predictor than how interested they are in math, right? So what this means for bringing education to underfunded areas is we just need to focus on interest, right? Math interest is all we need to spark to gain more students in STEM careers. So my closing point will be that if math interest is what we need to focus on for STEM careers, then mathematical thinking is a tool to incite that, right? By promoting visual storytelling, captivating ideas, and interesting questions in our math education, we can bring mathematical thinking to schools everywhere. And we can use this as a tool to overcome the socioeconomic disparities we see in our world today. Thank you.